Our next speaker is also a friend of mine who I've known for many years, and I'm going to ask Shayna Blaze to join us. I think she's somewhere over here on my screen. Yes, there you are. Hi, Shayna. So, for
Hi.
those watching in Australia, at least, I'm sure they're very familiar with you from all of the different television programs that you're on. But I asked you to join us today because of your charity work with Voice of Change. And we're very excited to hear from you. I know you were shooting today, so thank you for rushing back home and being with us, or actually for the whole webinar. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. And can I just say how incredible it is? I didn't think I was be able to get on here at like right on 5 o'clock and listen to all these incredible, inspiring people, what you're doing. And Carolyn, I've got one of the Billum bags that your ladies make. A friend of mine works in education over there. And a Tong, I go past your building, that artwork at South Bank all the time, and I always admire it. And now I know who the artist is, so that's fantastic. Um, Today we are going to talk about Voice of Change, which is a charity that I founded a few years ago. But I'll go back to earlier of why we created the charity. It is about creating change in family and domestic violence. And talking about family and domestic violence, a lot of people tend to go, oh, but I think what we've been listening to today is the magic of the arts. And there's humanity in arts, and there's expression, and there's connection, and there's conversations. And one thing that we learnt when we were doing the movie is how arts breaks down barriers, and that was the initial start of that. So my background, I started rearranging my bedroom from about 14 years old, and I went into interior design straight from high school, went into commercial design, ran my own businesses, broke away from that for a while for the entertainment world, and then went back into interior design. So most of my career has been about interior design, commercial art, and entertainment, whether it's as a singer or in TV. I've been on a few shows here in Australia about interior design and how design changes the lives of the people that are in there, not just by winning money on one of the shows I do called The Block, but on a show I did called Selling Houses Australia, and that was people that couldn't sell their house, but it was about them changing as people to work out how they would take design with them to the next place. So people used to get broken down by the things that they thought were set in their mind, and design really would change their lives. I believe that anyway. I know everyone here knows that design changes people's lives in such a positive way. I'll bring up my presentation first, so I will go on to the share on that. How we started a charity came back to just a project that I was doing with my kids. My son is a actor and screenwriter, and my daughter is a editor, and so they wanted to do a project themselves. And my son grew up with Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Lord of the Rings, and he loves all fantasy. And we wanted to make a movie that was relevant for the times, and definitely everything about women was so important, women's stories, what women were going through. And this first conversation was in 2017. And they were talking about doing a movie about family and domestic violence, but from the perspective of the mother and the son, and using fantasy as an escape. So they'd really written only one page treatment. And I was the MC for a candlelight vigil that we have in Australia called Safe Steps. And it's usually about April, May, and very, very cold. And we were going for a grant to create this short film, and we didn't get it. And my son and his partner came to see the candlelight vigil, and right in front of me was a group of 16-year-old schoolgirls that were in their school uniform, and it was like 8 o'clock at night, freezing cold. We had gone through all the a program of what we were doing for this candlelight vigil, and right at the end was a beautiful haunting song, and then they did a roll call of all the women and children that had been murdered by a former or actual partner, and it had all their names and ages. And here I am looking at these young schoolgirls, at 16, and being aware of that age group is about your first relationship, your first serious relationship. And I rang the kids afterwards and I just said, look, I don't know how we're going to make this movie, but we're going to. We're going to do something and make a difference. And so when we made the movie, we did it in through a case of making change in a different way of making a movie. We were very low budget, it was very self-funded, we got no grants to make it, so we handmade everything. Like you can see, those dinosaur eggs were paper mache and hand painted with craft paint. And there's a place in Victoria called Redwood Forest, so artists get in there and grab all the scraps. And when we were filming around the same time, there was a big nest there, so we already had the nest that was built for us. And we were doing a space scene, and we found through trolling through old magazines and old articles that there was these two guys that were builders that always wanted to make a spaceship of some kind. So they had all these offcuts of building materials, plumbing materials, and they built this spaceship in their garage. And we hunted them down and we asked them if we could do our space scene in their spaceship, and they were about to dismantle it about a month afterwards. So we created space, a space scene in an area that we just hired out for $300. We had the scene, the fantasy scene where they were shooting dinosaurs. That didn't cost us anything other than the paper mache eggs. But to do the house and build the scene, I, as an interior designer, as someone who has her own business, I bought a house, and it was because the house looked like Amityville Horror, and my son had written the script and had the basis of what it was going to be. And I said, look, I'll start looking for houses, but he drew the floor plan and he gave an idea of the look of the house, and I'd been looking for properties and this one kept coming up all the time. And you can see the bottom right, the state of the house. That's what the house looked like, and it looked like a horror movie. And jokingly I said, is this it? And within a week we decided that was the house. I bought it as a business proposition to film the movie, bit of a tax deduction, and when we filmed it we would flip it. So you can see the kitchen in the middle picture and the bottom left hand side. That was all we did, was paint the colour and put some artwork in it. So it was an 1890 house that had a few 70s, a few Art Deco changes in there, but nothing had really been touched since the 70s, so it was falling down. So for a house that we were setting this story in the 1990s was really perfect for us. So we created this movie that was about using fantasy scenes within the home for the mother and the son to escape when the violence was at home. And so we created these fantasy worlds, and on set, as you can see in the pictures, we had some old heads, some young heads, and it was a real mix of generations behind the scenes. And when we were creating the movie, we had a couple of really incredible scenes that we knew that we had to be very careful. We had to have an intimacy coordinator. We had to be very aware of everyone's mental health, of what's there. But what came out of that really sort of caught us all by surprise is that we're about halfway through. We didn't have a lot of funds. A lot of us were living in the house, so it served as accommodation too. And we were almost towards the end of it, and one of the crew, and a young person, who was sitting there having something to eat, just slowly voiced and said, that was my family. That's how I grew up. And then somebody else turned around, another young person, and just said, you know what? I feel bad because I grew up in a really safe, comfortable home, and I sort of all thought these things happened in movies. I thought it was in other parts of the country. I didn't think that this could be something that's happening to somebody I know. And then somebody that was in my age group said, I actually feel really bad because I knew that down the road was a woman that was basically being beaten up by her husband. But because it was their problem, we didn't know what to do. We didn't do anything. And so when we were finishing up the movie, we knew that when this movie came out, it was going to have an impact of some description. And for me, I felt that dropping a movie that's about family and domestic violence wasn't just a creative project. It was about something that it's already started conversations and changing people and how they talked and being really comfortable to talk about it, which is quite unusual. And so we did a lot of research. We went to the police commissioner talking about family and domestic violence. We went to lawyers. We went to the head of police, sergeant that was investigating family and domestic violence that created laws, judges, Supreme Court. We went to shelters. And one of the biggest things that we found was that there's a lot of services for women fleeing. There's a lot that we know. We hear statistics. We know what's going on. And for me, the biggest thing that I wanted to feel is though that we could do something with this movie in stopping it before it starts. And the saying is that we want to get there before we don't want to be the ambulance waiting at the bottom of the cliff. We want to stop it at the top of the cliff. So the goal when this movie came out was to screen it and just see what the reactions were. Now, in this scene here, this is what ended up being the poster. And the vision on the left, the character called Kitty, that was a big turning point in the movie. But we had to play that scene about 5 or 6 times. And if anyone's worked with actors who really involve in their part, they live it. And she was so physically emotive in this and so involved, and she sobbed probably on call for maybe 2 or 3 hours. And just the act of going through this and knowing what was about to happen in the next scene was so harrowing for everybody that we all believed that we have got to stop it before the inevitable happens. And we started that in 2017. We filmed in 2018. We were ready to release in 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. You know, we were at the Perth Film Festival. Our flights were cancelled on us a week before we were to screen, so we missed out on showing it at the film festival. At Cannes Film Festival, we actually got on the online version of Cannes Film Festival, which was really exciting. But Cannes had never done it online, so it crashed. So we didn't get onto that part. So there was all these parts of stopping us and stopping us and stopping us. But we believed in the movie so much and the power of the message of what it could do that it sat with me going, I know that we're doing the right thing. So anything that's creative, we know takes time. So I'd just like to play the trailer of the movie. Hopefully the sound will come up because it really makes it so much more emotive. So fingers crossed. And I have to reshare this PDF after it, don't I?
Tom needs to get to school. I'll send Tom out. The house is a mess. See you, bye.
In local news, homeowners will get some reprieve with banks cutting interest rates.
Nice to see a little effort.
Hello. Mary. Hi.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, fine.
How's Tom?
Do you want to talk about it?
It's okay. We can change things.
I decided to make something for you. I'm in your room.
Mom,
It can be whatever you want.
so big.
We can hang out today, just the two of us. Your dad makes a lot of mistakes.
Can you come in? Welcome to the mission.
Wow.
We can be whoever we want, go wherever we want. Each day starts brand new.
Tom, the word's a lot shittier outside that tent.
You'd make a great warrior. You could take down any monster you want.
Thank you, sweetie.
The trailer is very emotive, and we had it on a lot of screenings around the country, trying to get through COVID. And we have been working behind the scenes trying to get it onto a streaming service. So that's our main goal. But what came out of this is making the movie is that I knew that the message had to go further than just the movie. So that's where I decided to create a charity called Voice of Change. And Voice of Change means that it's not just about awareness. We know what family and domestic violence is. We have heard of it. The statistics, those who aren't watching from Australia, the statistics in Australia are absolutely horrendous for the size of our country. And each week we could hear 2 or 3 women who are murdered by their current partner or the former partner. So there is a lot of sadness about family and domestic violence, but we are in today the World Hope Forum. So the reason I'm here is to talk about the hope of changing and ending family and domestic violence, which has to come from the core. And so our motto is using the arts to amplify the voices of victim and survivors, and so that we can change cultural attitudes. So changing culture and society is how you do it. The police can only do so much. The government can only do so much. It is us as a society have lost our way in humanity, looking out for people, caring about people. And this really underpins the basis of family and domestic violence. Now, I've just put a little link there on this page here. Really, just if you are triggered by anything that we are talking about today, just on that link there, we have some services in Australia. And if you're looking at somewhere else from not Australia, you can have a look on our page and just Google services that are similar to that in your area. I think the thing is that why do we need to talk about family and domestic violence? I hate talking about statistics because we lose the human nature of the people that experiences this. And we are talking the basis of what family and domestic violence is. So we talk about family and domestic violence as whether it's a partner or as a child. But where does it stem from? So if we look at some of these numbers, we look at 1 in 3 women have experienced physical violence since the age of 15. Now, this doesn't have to come from a partner. This doesn't have to come from a family member. This could be just a schoolboy in the yard. And we've seen the power of the series Adolescence that's been on TV that's really taken the world by storm. And that's really, you look at the cultural attitudes of that young child and what he is saying about his anger, about where he sits in his hierarchy in the school ground. So the physical violence can come from any areas. And if you get away with that at such a young age, then it perpetuates and moves on. 1 in 5 women have experienced sexual violence since the age of 15. Now, sexual violence can mean many forms, and sexual violence is really when it's your boundaries taken away from you and your consent is taken away from you. And I don't think enough power has been given to the knowledge that we talk about consent, but the problem is now is that pornography is such a huge element of where children are learning about their sexual life. And so consent means now that they might be consenting to something that is a bit more violent than what it should be, but because that's where they're learning and that's where it's going, they don't realize they're actually being abused. So that's a very important thing to look at as well. 1 in 4 women have experienced sexual or physical violence by a former or current intimate partner. If you look at that number 1 in 4, I do a lot of corporate talks, and you sit in a place where there is 400 people and you say 1 in 4 people have experienced sexual or physical violence, and that's a lot of people. But then you've got the other side of it. Someone has to do it too. So you've got the numbers. If 1 in 4 women have received it, it means 1 in 4 possibly men or same-sex partners have produced this as well. I think 1 in 2 women experience sexual harassment in their lifetime is something that is, honestly, I don't know about you, but I find it quite ridiculous that we are in this day and age that we still have sexual harassment to that stage. We're an intelligent culture, we're intelligent people, we are very well learned, but we still experience this. So where do we go and how do these statistics keep going? Well, with Voice of Change, we have sat quietly, we've stood back for about a year because we knew what we were doing was we have to work harder in changing culture and we have to work hard in creating learnings. There's a lot of information out there about what do you do? How do you change family and domestic violence? But a lot of that is created by the government. A lot of that is created that only professionals have access to. So what we've learnt with Voice of Change is that the government sit here, the law change makers sit there, the police sit there, the services sit there, and the community don't have the knowledge of everything that's going on. So we decided with Voice of Change, and we've spoken to a lot of these departments, that we are now the conduit where we can actually take the information, we can take the statistics, we can find out where things are happening. Where people are funded by government, they have to be really careful about what they say. So we're not funded by any government grants, so that we can be very honest and talk about where sexual violence comes from, where physical violence comes from, where it starts in the school ground, where it starts in primary school, where it's important to actually talk about these parts of family and domestic violence. So the main thing, and this might seem really simple, a lot of people get overwhelmed of like, well, we haven't been able to solve it for so long. The world has sort of gone a little bit mad. How do we change it? Well, this is where the cultural shift has to happen. And if you think of it in really simple ways, that these 2 pillars are the beginning of everything. So gender inequality, you've heard a little bit about it today, gender inequality in finances, gender inequality in being able to make decisions for themselves, being able to have the opportunities and being able to sit within the basic hierarchy of where we are as women and men. And it really is a big part of what keeps women down and having a voice. The other part is general disrespect. And this is something that we are seeing that is just elevating and elevating and elevating. And going back to the movie and series Adolescence, where you see a young child at 13 be this baby, and then he flips and starts quoting terminology from Andrew Tate and starts quoting terminology of areas that the woman has no power to them, and this comes from the mouth of a 13-year-old. Unfortunately, I do know people that are teachers in primary school, and we have young kids in grade 5 and grade 6 that are saying to teachers, "Woman, do not speak to me." And this comes from very high level private schools. So it's really concerning. So where do we focus on changing culture? We look at where young men look up to people, and this is not where we're just saying this is just the patriarchy. This means that this is our culture worldwide at the moment. So where do we look at those moments that we can make a change? And we look at, who do young children, not just girls and boys, but who do young children look up to, in the fact that who is making them feel like they are their heroes? Who are the people? And in Australian culture, the biggest heroes we have are sporting people, and they hold a lot of power of what kids look up to, its community. And so Voice of Change, we are working with communities, and we are working in sporting areas where we want to make change, where we have sporting people on our side saying that they don't believe that we should be living in this type of world. So we are going through a rebrand at the moment, and we're going through something that we haven't announced yet, and I'm giving you a little sneak peek, is that we have created a brand new action, is that we have to stand up to what is happening. We need to call out bad behaviour. We never look at anything that is when you're in danger. And so it's about calling out disrespect. That is the first start. When somebody calls somebody a bad name, you stand up to it. One of the biggest explanations is if you're at a dinner party and you're in a dinner party of people that you know, there might be 8 people, there might be 10 people. And there are many people, I know I've been at a dinner party when I was younger, that you'd be sitting at the dinner table and there'd be one person that would say something quite disrespectful, either about their partner, about somebody that they all know, and nobody knows how to say anything back to them. So everyone does that uncomfortable laugh and don't say anything and just move on. Or the amount of times that you hear somebody talking on the radio and they say a derogatory thing and everyone else in the room laughs. It's actually happened to me, where somebody said something quite derogatory about me and everyone laughed because it was an uncomfortable laugh and they didn't know what to say. So what Voices Change is doing is we're creating the tools of what is that language? How do you say that? We'll be uploading some free tools on our website. We're creating education in corporate places, in school communities and in sporting cultures, where people have the same tools and they can learn the same language, whether they're at a school, whether they're in the corporate office, whether they're at the footy oval. We all need to have the same language, and it all started with the arts. It started with the movie. I've written a song. We've got a song that we're performing at the World Congress in Cambridge University this year. We're showing the movie. I'm singing the song that I wrote for the movie, and talking about the power of the arts to make them stand up. So the World Congress, where we're showing the movie this year in Cambridge University, is showing it to judges, the Supreme Court, and psychologists and lawyers that deal with family and domestic violence worldwide. So they all come together to try and get their messages of what's working and how they can make change. So we're looking at how we can create our voice with them as well. I think the thing is, the arts, we started with the movie, we've done music, we're now looking at other ways that we can do it with written word, with sculpture, with fabrics, with textile. We've got a couple of other projects that we're going to do. So anyone that's watching here at the moment that's as an artist, we are happy to collaborate in projects coming up. Even just register or reach out to us of works that you do, and we will use stories from victims and survivors and interpret them into the arts to make awareness and for people to break conversations. And that's the biggest thing, is the art is the icebreaker. And we can say, as this poster says, I stand up and take a stand to change, because if we use the arts as the icebreaker, we know that we can stand up, because we've got a saying that's being used all around the country. If you say it once, the person next to you has heard it on a campaign, they will stand next to you, then the person will stand next to you, then the person will stand next to you. So that's the thing, how we change culture, is that we need the brave voice to say it first, but then we need the brave person to stand next to them, and then the third voice and the fourth voice. There's great studies that have been done that how do you change culture? How do you change it? And how hard is it? Well, there's a study done, sorry, I've completely forgotten the university. If anyone wants to know it, I can actually get it to Philip and send it. But it's a study that was done about 10 years ago, that you only need to shift culture by 25% to change the minds and create a movement. So at Voice of Change, we know that we can't change everyone's mind, but we know that if we work within community, we work in sports communities, we work in corporate, we work in arts, and bring them all together, that we're spreading that 25% so far and wide that we get that, and we are 100% sure that we can make change in this next generation. And a generation spans 15 years. I know you all know that. And a generation, if we can change it within 15 years, it means those little 16-year-old girls that I saw sitting there at Fed Square, I can stop, and we can stop the next generation of young girls that are going into their very first relationship being a victim or survivor. So thank you so much for allowing me to have that voice, Philip and Lee. It's really important to me. And I think the thing is that this is something that we can all do. Never think that you can't do anything. And especially if you don't feel brave enough to stand up, take note of what's happening, and you could actually speak to the person later. You could actually say, look, I didn't believe what you said and I don't agree with it, because the heat of the exchange has been taken out of there. And never feel like you haven't got a voice. And if you don't feel like a voice, there's people out there that are going to stand up for you and give you that voice. Because I think we all know, for family and domestic violence, it doesn't just come from physical violence, it comes from disrespect, and it starts very slowly. And, you know, we've all heard about coercive control. We didn't know what coercive control was in 2017, and our movie is filled with coercive control. So subliminally, it was all there. So it goes on, and it's there as a cycle of mental violence that goes through generation and generation. We can
Thank
make a
you.
change.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying we can make a change and we can make a difference.
Thank you, Silvano. It's very important, this part of our seminar. I'm sure that many people are working in this field, and it's very beautiful to see how you use all forces at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Shayna. And I'm so happy about this new campaign you have. So I think it's an important next step, and we'll share it not just with the people on camera today, but of course, North and South America are going to be watching a recording of this. And we have over 30 or 40,000 people on our mailing list. So we'll definitely spread the word. Yeah, thank you so much.